Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first edition of BizPod.Ninja. It's a very special show today. It's my launch, something that I've been meaning to get kicked off for almost a year, but didn't quite have all the pieces and time to get everything done. And all the creative work, all the process. So I'm really excited to have everyone here today to tune in. And those who aren't live, watching this live right now, this show will be recorded in the future. COVID-19 certainly expedited me getting to air on this. And it's with great honor. I get to have my first guest, one of my most dear friends, Eric Engineer, with me. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Andreas, this is amazing. I'm so excited to be and honored to be your first guest.
Couldn't think of a better candidate as my guinea pig. Actually, we did a few trial runs, truth be told, before that Eric weathered through. So I owe him dearly for that, for a few of my missteps previously. Anyhow, we have Eric Engineer on the show. Eric Engineer, despite his last name, and people think it's a creative name, but not only is it creative, it's actually true. Eric Engineer is also an engineer by background. At Rice University, he got his comp sci degree, a master's degree there. I used to work with Eric Engineer at my first job at Microsoft, where we were both on the same team in product management back in the day before iPhone and Android. So very first smartphone creation. Windows Mobile for all of those Microsoft fans. Yeah. And employees.
Pocket PC. I don't know who remembers that.
Which one?
Pocket PC.
Oh, Pocket PC and Pocket PC phone edition.
How old we are.
That's We were certainly bellwethers in the industry at the time. He went to Harvard Business School, HBS, graduating to pursue a VC role at Sevin Rosen Funds, where he then joined one of his portfolios, Invodo, where he was VP of Product and Partnerships. And then became CEO of Invodo, based in Austin, ultimately selling the company in 2018 to Industrial Color. He's now back as in venture capital as a partner at S3 Ventures in Texas, headquartered in Austin. Given his career, he's a masterful business ninja, and with truths from the trenches that we are going to explore on the show. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Andreas.
How's
man? As I love to call you.
Depending. How's Texas these days? I know you guys were and I guess everyone is sick and tired of COVID and Corona talk, but let's just get it out of the room a little bit, because I actually am curious to see how all the Texans are dealing with Corona. I have a few friends in Houston who told me as of a few weeks ago it's been open. People are out in restaurants and out and about. How does it feel for you?
Yeah, Texas is open for business, or opening. And then Austin, is beautiful outdoor weather. It's still getting hotter right now because it's the summer, but people have been eager to get out. It's a beautiful place, so people kind of rush to get out. I think starting Memorial Day weekend and continue to do that. My family, we haven't. We've been on lockdown.
Well, that's because you're very responsible.
Yeah, we also had we had a death in our extended family from COVID. So, and we have young kids, so we're taking it seriously. We don't need to be the guinea pigs. We'll let other people do that.
And then guinea pig on the show.
What happens?
Got it. Yeah, I'm here in Los Angeles. So we've been slammed with of course, COVID like everyone else, but a lot of protests and demonstrations, and at some point some crazy riots. Right here in Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. So anyhow, great to have you on the show. How is, kind of first question I want to ask you for folks, given your background, and I know you pretty damn well. I want to dig and drill in a couple of areas, and particularly, I have my own VC fund in practice. And it's different here in California. I'm really curious, how is venture capital and the sort of work and the sort of deal flow that you're seeing right now, and the sort of deals that you're trying to get into? How has COVID and Corona affected you personally as a VC first? And secondly, given your focus is in Texas, how has that changed maybe your focus or altered it in any way?
Yep. Well, so I'm at S3 Ventures. We're the largest venture capital firm focused on Texas. And so really what we invest in, whether it's seed A or B, is really always in companies that are either headquartered in Texas or have a large presence in Texas. So that's really kind of the world I live in. And I'd say, it's probably the same as it is in other parts of the country as it relates to the impact that it's had on kind of the startup ecosystem. Initially we were all scrambling to figure out what does it mean for our portfolios. We were, kind of triaging, trying to figure out what the new world might look like, what cuts they may have to make to their teams. I think the vast majority of our companies did make some sort of cuts, whether it was in the form of furloughs or layoffs. But we also had some companies, that really benefited from the environment, and their pipelines doubled or tripled, and revenue started to go way up, and then others went to zero. And
can you tell me about
that uncertainty?
Can you tell me a little bit about those portfolios and companies that benefited?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to give specific names, but
sure. No, I think it kind of generally enabled some sort of kind of remote collaboration or a kind of remote engagement with customers, and or training, things that were like usually like in one case, they enabled training that was kind of a digital version of what you might do in person. And so, anything that was digitizing real world, what otherwise was happening kind of offline, just got accelerated. So, so that was really beneficial to those companies, and they're actually ahead of plan for the year. Whereas other ones, like I was mentioning earlier, maybe ones that rely on marketing dollars or advertising dollars, or in the healthcare space, we have some investments that, were elective surgeries or elective procedures. They went to zero revenue in the month of April. And so it's just a really wide variety of situations to deal with and a lot of uncertainty. But I think we kind of got, I wouldn't say past it, but, the initial kind of focus on that kind of was most of April and May. We were also trying to figure out the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and what that meant for our companies and making sure they secured the dollars that they might be entitled to. So after we got past all of that craziness, it then started getting back to, okay, like what does investing look like in this new world? Can we make new investments? Where do we feel comfortable, not only from understanding kind of business plans for the rest of the year, like can you invest with all the uncertainty, but then also what does it look like to invest when you've never actually met the person face to face?
That's right.
Can you do a full Zoom relationship, net starting from zero? And I think we can, and we have been kind of moving in that direction.
Have you done that right now? That's actually really interesting because I've had to deal with that myself, to make some investments whereby, I can't actually meet the founders of the team in person. It has been by Zoom. And there are some M&A processes and projects that I'm also concurrently working on, and going to market soon. And for me, I'm like, how does COVID and how does Corona change the environment where we can't see people face to face? Because I feel, as any business ninja such as yourself knows, nothing can replace the face-to-face interaction of another human. There's a lot of body language, a lot of excitement. How do you think, are people just going to accept that this is the way it needs to be for a little bit? Will they just grow into that? Or do you think it's going to actually make deal making more difficult?
Well, I think it'll slow things down because it just maybe takes a little longer to develop some of those relationships, maybe some of those meetings, even the diligence process, where you would maybe sit in a room together for multiple hours at a time as you're getting really deep into diligence. That's kind of tiring to do in a video setting. And so, that might get broken up into more like just separate meetings. And then, often a lot of the relationship building is spending time, not only just like getting a coffee and other things like that, but actually we, always go out to dinner, with the founders and things like that, prior to kind of extending a term sheet and really getting to know people kind of at a social level as well. Because, you're starting a relationship that is multiple years going forward, where you're going to probably have ups and downs. And so you want to understand how people behave, and what their style is like, and, whether there's a good fit culturally. with your firm, both ways. They're evaluating you and you're evaluating them. And so we are, try to figure out what are the substitutes for that.
Interesting.
In this environment. So we've in one case, I know my partner Charlie, he actually did like a 2-hour like happy hour with a couple founders, over video conferencing, and kind of tried to do that, and so those things are things that I think we are going to test out, try, see how it works, whether it helps get us there to get deals across the finish line. But it is a big change for us because we're local oriented investors, right? I'm pretty sure like if you're a global investor, you're doing a lot of stuff more digitally, but almost in our case, like we are face to face. Maybe the first meeting might be a call or video conference, but pretty much every other meeting after that, from a diligence standpoint, is usually face to face. And so we don't get that experience. The other thing that we don't get, which is tough, is you don't get to go actually visit the office, right? Like, usually we're doing a lot of those meetings in their offices. If they have them, getting to know like kind of what the feel of the office is, the culture. You get so much.
For any of our listeners or viewers who've dialed in, Eric's talking about making through due diligence as it relates to venture capital investment. So you're saying generally you go to the office, you go on site, meet the team. You can't do that now.
Right. I mean, you can maybe meet the team and, through kind of a big Zoom conference, and you have a bunch of heads in front of you and people take turns talking, but it's not the same in terms of, walking through the hallway, getting introductions, doing the tour, getting a feel for like, what do the walls look like? What are people saying? What's the buzz and the energy level? And then just even the way the management team interacts with each other in a room, the way people interact in a room is very different than the way they interact on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And, especially in like a creative process or in a tense situation. And so it's just, those intangibles, I think, are things that might be harder to, kind of find substitutes for. But I think we still feel comfortable making investments and kind of have done like a smaller, one and are gone deep into diligence on several in this environment.
Got it. For any kind of founders and companies looking for investment right now, early investment, because they may not have the metrics approved for Series B or Series C onwards. Mm-hmm. Those who are looking for seed or Series A, what would be the one piece of advice you would give them regarding fundraising when speaking or approaching a venture capitalist for the first time?
I'll give two things because they're kind of two sides of a coin. One is just making sure that now is the right time to go fundraising, right? So I think what we're finding is a lot of companies are saying, I don't have visibility or a sense of what the rest of the year might look like. Now that's getting better now than it was a month ago because things feel like they're stabilizing a little bit. You kind of understand what the bottom is and you're starting to see things maybe move in a positive direction again. But you have to kind of feel like you have enough data points to where you can actually tell a story about how much cash you're going to need and what kind of results you might generate this year and next. And so if you feel good about that and you have those data points, or if things are going really well or accelerated because of this environment, like I said, that is also true for a lot of categories. Now is a great time to go out. But, so kind of making sure that it's the right time. And then if it is, I think what I was alluding to earlier is important, which is make sure that as part of that process, you're almost creating time within the meetings, the online meetings and things like that, to almost have kind of this more informal, social kind of interaction.
Build rapport. So
build rapport, exactly.
Virtual cocktail.
Like, otherwise, normally, like in face-to-face meetings, you spend a good amount of 5-10 minutes, whether it's before a meeting, after a meeting, during the coffee breaks, the bathroom breaks, just having more kind of chit chat, kind of sidebar conversations and getting to know people at maybe a more personal level. That doesn't happen as naturally in the Zoom environment. And so, so that's something that I encourage people to kind of find ways to do that, be creative about that, because I think that's a big part of getting people kind of across the finish line.
Got it. Question. Given the change in environment, macro environment, COVID, what are two sectors or businesses or areas that you are particularly interested from your perspective at S3 that you may not have considered pre-COVID? Are there any new kind of industries or sectors or areas of business that from a deal flow perspective, you're increasingly interested in, and as a firm?
Yeah, well, so as a firm, because we are focused on Texas, I like to say our thesis is Texas. We believe that Texas is a pretty unique market where there's just incredible talent and a lot of history in terms of entrepreneurship, but maybe not as much funding, especially at some of the later stages like we do in the Series B. And so we just think of it as there's a great opportunity that's going to continue to get better in Texas. So that's our thesis. And so we don't tend to build specific investment themes or seek out businesses beyond the fact that we focus on, generally on business technology and consumer digital experiences, or even healthcare, but it always has like some kind of software or technology bent to it. That being said, clearly there are things that are accelerated, right? I mean, trends that maybe it took we thought would happen over 3 or 4 years, maybe will happen over 1 or 2. And those again fall in the same categories that I was mentioning earlier that we're seeing in our portfolio, where maybe there's essentially digitization of things that were still kind of stuck in a hybrid or pure offline world. And a lot of industries, they're specific, and we were doing these investments prior to this, so this is just kind of maybe making us feel more comfortable about that. But there are entire industries that were laggards in digitization. Whether it's the construction industry, whether it's still healthcare is a big one, financial services, it's amazing how much still paperwork is still part of the financial services world. And so, so there's just a lot of those things that, and I mentioned training earlier too, in we have an investment that we do this training for the skilled trades, for plumbers, HVAC technicians, things like that, where a lot of that training is done in a real world setting as where you're basically shadowing a more senior technician and learning that way. Now you can do that in virtual environments, right? Almost video game environments or VR environments even. And so, all of those things that were we thought, okay, it might take several years to become more mainstream, people are testing out and trying now, and we think will stick. So yeah, I mean, I think it's more acceleration of a lot of the digitization that we already knew was happening.
Yeah,
versus net new.
I'm seeing that as well. I agree with that, and have been seeing increasingly more deal flow around that, and a lot more interest in that space. Another question I have for you is for our listeners and viewers as it relates to M&A, mergers and acquisitions in this environment. You ended up helping build one of your portfolios. You joined, as we mentioned before, Invodo, where you were running partnerships and business development, became CEO, sold that company. And that was a few years back. What was it, 2018? End of 2018? Yep.
Yeah, when we sold, yeah.
Can you give us just a really high level kind of what you did in that process to sell that company? But just enough information so that we know how you might change it differently during this year's COVID period. So if there's some things from an M&A perspective as a CEO of a portfolio who successfully transacted that company, what are the main points you would make, and how might you alter those conversations or that due diligence process or that negotiation under this new environment, at least for the next year? A lot of companies are looking to transact, or may find this time useful to transact, or they may not have the dry powder to see them through for the next year. They will have to transact. And I think this is a great piece of insight from your perspective that I think I would love to hear, and everyone else. What might be those differences as it relates to an M&A process?
Yeah, sure. So, I think what I learned through that process, and at Invodo, we actually had a couple years prior, we got left at the altar, where we thought we were going to get a deal done, and we didn't. And so I've kind of been through the process twice with one company, and I'd say I think what I learned from all of that was, at the end of the day, it really all comes down to, at some point, leverage. And what I mean by that is, if you are only talking to one serious buyer, you're going to probably land up in a pretty difficult situation when it comes to negotiation, especially if it's very clear that you're selling because you might be in dire straits or because of, this current environment, things like that. So, like, you want to buy low, sell high. And right now, it really depends what market you're in to understand, whether it's a good time to even sell. So clearly, if you're in a hot space where people are trying to catch up around like certain trends, whether it's remote work, digitization, or whatever, and you're enabling some of that, and you're helping, and some of the people that are trying to buy you right now are trying to catch up, and there's a sense of urgency, then clearly you have the leverage. And even if it's just one party, at least it's something like you can walk away from that negotiation and have leverage. And so now might be an amazing time, right, to explore that and do that. But if you're feeling like maybe it's just like it's become too hard or difficult, or you're having a hard time raising money, and you're trying to sell because of that, that's going to be a very challenging thing unless you find multiple parties that might be interested, and then you create the sense of scarcity, right? And maybe create value for yourself that way. But the last thing you want to be is only talking to one interested party and don't feel like you can walk away.
That's interesting.
Right? And if you're not, that's something you probably want to try to avoid at all costs, because it's just usually doesn't end up in a good spot for shareholders or the founders or anyone like that.
That's right. Eric, what would be your piece of advice regarding, you mentioned get multiple parties interested, create scarcity. What would be the best advice you could give to folks listening in order to do that? How would you go about that? What's the best way? And what's quite frankly, the best way in today's environment? Because as you know, we can't really be traveling. People can't be traveling to Silicon Valley and New York or Europe to drive interest and have those.
Well, I haven't really tried I haven't personally tried to do this. We have some portfolio companies that they haven't been announced. One actually did go through a transaction a few weeks ago that closed. Can't speak to who it is yet. And then we have another, actually a couple that are having discussions right now. So it's definitely happening. There's definitely M&A conversations happening in this environment. And then it really goes back to if you're in a situation where you're considering an acquisition because maybe you feel like it's a kind of a value maximizing time right now to do that, then it's hard to kind of manufacture that, frankly, like from a dead stop. I think you can hire a bank and things like that, and they can reach out to interested parties, and some folks are going to be in a buy mode right now because they think they can get deals, or because they're making strategic, like they're trying to catch up, right? So ideally, you're trying to get more of the folks that are trying to catch up, not trying to get good deals. And then, and a banker can do that, but frankly, I think the best
or an M&A advisor. Let's not forget
an M&A advisor, a banker, anyone. Yes, like Andreas can do that. But and I think that's helpful. That kind of creates more folks that can kind of create that sense of scarcity. But the ones that probably are going to be the highest probability, the ones that are going to maybe even pay the most value, are going to probably be the ones where you had an existing relationship before, where they, ideally there was even a partnership or some kind of, or they've seen you in the market and dealt with you in the market and kind of they're not learning about you for the very first time through kind of some cold outreach to corporate development. So those are probably the best, right? Like if but beggars can't be choosers always. And so sometimes you're going to do things more in an auction kind of try to set up. But, again, it's trying to be positioned in a way, in a position of strength. And so you want to kind of create that sense that people are pursuing you, not that you're,
That's classic advice across all areas of life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So that's why I think it's hard. I mean, in this environment, you really want to be approached. I don't think you want to be going out as much, but you then maybe if you're getting approached and then you want to build more people around that process, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
But, I wouldn't try to initiate right now unless you feel like there's like you're a very valuable kind of addition in this kind of environment. And now like the timing right now is special, right? And you're going to get your value at this time.
I agree with that. So this show is meant to be 25 to 30 minutes. We're at the tail end. I have two questions. I've got one from our community. So one of our viewers has asked me live, Moritz from Berlin right now. He's asking, will July or August be active or dead months in the investor community this year? Typically in the summer, we always find, especially in Europe, but in the US, I always say, early July, end of June to early August are dead months. It takes 3 times longer. Under this new, Corona and COVID situation, what's your thoughts there? I have the belief we're still going to be active because people are still cooped up. There's no sense of summer this year. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'd say, it's kind of like there's 2 countervailing things, right? So there's like all this pent up deal activity that didn't happen maybe over the last couple of months, that people are at some point, especially when you're raising money, you can only maybe bridge to a certain point, and then you have to really start thinking about outside investors. So I could see some of that maybe, and that has started to happen for sure. I think that we're seeing a little bit of that, but frankly, at the same time, you do have the same kind of summer vacation effect. I mean, I keep hearing of people, they're getting the Airbnbs and going for 2 weeks with their families somewhere. It's starting to happen. And so I think you'll still have that kind of vacation period. Kids are home from, off from school and things like that. And so that will still also be something that could slow things down. And the third piece is just the general uncertainty around, is there and I don't know if we'll get it. Is there a real slowdown, or is the worst yet to come kind of thing? All of that is like, what's the benefit of doing a deal now versus later? It's really company and market specific. Yeah. And in some cases it totally makes sense. And in other cases it's like, now's not the right time. Got it. So that's, those are all things that make me feel net. I don't think it's going to be faster than last year, right? It'll definitely be slower than last year, and just how much slower.
Got it. Final question. Where's the first restaurant in Austin you're going to go to when you can, when everything's open? It's already open up now, but I know you're pouring. What are you most craving? Because I've been to Austin. I've been with you a lot of times.
This is kind of a religious statement in Austin, Texas, the home of, we love our barbecue and our tacos. And Taco Deli, which I will claim is the best in Austin. People will disagree with me on that one, but that's definitely one that I am eager to eat multiple times. And
what exactly would you order off that menu? What's your go-to? For those who want to go to Austin or been there, who want to check it out.
Yeah, they have this great mole sauce on a chicken taco that I love.
Green or red?
Red. Yeah.
Ooh, excellent choice.
So, looking forward to that.
Hey everyone, thank you so much.
At home as well. That's hard to do at home. So
that's hard to do at home. And as we all know, good mole, the home is in Oaxaca, so southern Mexico, and that's. If you're saying it's the best mole in town, that means that's.
I don't know about it's the best mole taco. I'd say.
Best mole taco. Okay. Hey Eric, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Persisting through this struggle of doing multiple test runs with me and podcasts and video, and me screwing up everything at first, and now we kind of got to this space. And thank you to the team at Social Live and Tori specifically for. Being in the back end right here, helping us produce this first show to, put on my, what do you call it? Wheel trainers for bikes, training wheels.
I'll always be a person.
I can pull them off.
I'll always be a first. Remember that.
Exactly. Now I can pull them off for subsequent shows. Thank you so much, Eric. Loved having you here. You are a true business ninja. Keep safe. Tell your family, hugs and kisses. Love to see you guys soon in the future. And for those who have listened or dialed in or watched the show later, this will be a weekly 25 to 30 minute show where we have business ninjas from around the world, truths from the trenches, venture capitalists, top tier VCs like Eric, M&A advisors, founders from world-class companies, and generally people I like. So it's going to be a good time, and hopefully provide some information, insight into the industries of technology, media, and entertainment. and at least provide us some, comic relief here and there as well while we're on the show where we're all cooped up at home. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, buddy.